Welcome everyone to this workshop on getting ready for Pesach. I appreciate very much that Rabbi Eisenbach of the CRC is with me on the call as well. I have muted everyone's phones or everyone's computers. And the way, if you have any questions that arise, the best way to communicate with us is via the chat function, which is part of Zoom. Chat to everyone and we will all be able to see it. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible. But I have the questions that were sent in advance, and we're also going to be looking towards helping everyone remember the basics of what you need to do. This year, obviously, is a very complicated year, but it shouldn't be more complicated than any other year in terms of preparing for Pesach. And my goal today is to make it a little bit easier than any other year. And so let me start with a couple of simple facts that we need to remember about Pesach. First of all, the mitzvah of observing Pesach is the same for both men and women. And so as a result, we have to make sure that whatever preparations need to take place for Pesach, that both men and women are able to be relaxed and rested when they come to the Seder night. Anyone who feels that one segment of the Jewish people never made it out of slavery is getting it all wrong. Number two. Very often, we confuse Pesach cleaning with spring cleaning. You can do spring cleaning whenever you want. I would suggest doing it after Pesach because there's enough work to do for Pesach that is necessary. And all of the rest of the things, like going through linen closets or making sure that everybody's drawers are clean and neat and relined, have nothing to do with Pesach. The third thing to remember about preparing for Pesach is that those areas where chametz does not appear, where you don't bring chametz to in the middle of the year, doesn't need to be cleaned. For those of you who have families with small children, you have a lot more spaces that you have to worry about. For those of us who are empty nesters, the number of places is limited. I could guess that for most of us, you don't have to clean the attic for Pesach, because the odds of someone taking something there is very, very low. But also think about what rooms really needed to be cleaned. And in fact, the way we can get ready for Pesach, the best way is, I would suggest working backwards. The most important thing that should consume the most amount of time is the oven, your stove and your oven. That's the most important place to clean. Working backwards from there, then you have the kitchen, and then after that, the house where chametz might appear. One last general principle in all of this is that we need to remember that when we're cleaning for Pesach, there are two issues we're concerned about. The first is the prohibition of bal yirah, bal yimatzeh, that you can't have chametz. That not having chametz, though, means you can't have a piece of chametz that's in your possession that's over the size of a kezias, of an olive. About nowadays, with the most stringent of positions, it would be about the size of an egg. That's a pretty big piece of chametz. So if there's one Cheerio that you have missed somewhere, you're not violating the prohibition of bal yirah, bal yimatzeh. Not only that, when it comes to the chametz, if you remember, we all sell our chametz. I'll deal with the sale of chametz in a little bit. We all sell the chametz. And so even those larger pieces are typically included within the sale. So what's left to really be concerned about is small pieces of chametz that are easily accessible, that we have a concern may somehow make their way into food or maybe eaten by accident. Going back to those couple small pieces of Cheerios here or there, which are definitely not a kezias. It's not the prohibition of having the Cheerios that's the real issue. It's the prohibition of possibly eating those couple of pieces of Cheerios. And so that's why we start cleaning. Easily accessible places, for example, and moving away from the kitchen for the moment, is the space between the cushions and the couch. Those kind of places. However, when we're talking about cleaning and accessibility and small amounts, you do not have to move out your refrigerator nor your stove before Pesach. Those are good things to do if you want to have a clean kitchen. But the small pieces of chametz that might be back there, we are pretty safe in believing that no one is going to move out your stove to be able to grab those little crumbs and mix them into their food. So remember, a few simple background principles, and then we'll move from there. Number one, everyone has to take Pesach with all of its seriousness, but everyone has to be rested, relaxed, and ready for the night of the Seder. Men and women, we all got out of slavery. Number two, if there are places where there's no chametz, then you don't have to worry about those places. Three, the amount of chametz that we're really concerned about are larger pieces of chametz, and when it comes to the crumbs, we're concerned that a person may somehow eat them over the course of Pesach. And four, the most important place to work on is the oven and the kitchen. Now, before I get any further in any of the details of all of this, and Rabbi Eisenbach has been quietly listening along, and I appreciate it, and he'll correct me if he disagrees with anything, or we may disagree on certain things, each of us having our own piskei halacha that we rely upon. I want to step back for a moment and talk about mechiras chametz this year. This year, the mechiras chametz, unfortunately, we can't do in person. And so every shul, I believe, and I know for sure Kins, has an option of being able to email the mechiras chametz forms to the shul. I will receive all of the mechiras chametz forms. You can fill them out. You can print. We have a PDF on our website. You can fill it out, take a picture, send the picture to me at rabbi@konkins.org or at matanki@att.org. They both go to the same place. You can email it to me, and I will take care of the mechiras chametz. The one complication of all of this, of course, is the actual sale to the non-Jew has to be done in person. And so when we get together to sell for the non-Jew, there will be a bezdin that will meet with a non-Jewish person. We will sell all of the chametz, but all of the forms can be sent to me or to your local Orthodox rabbi. I know there are people on this call who are not regularly part of KINS. We're happy to have you, and we'll be happy to take care of that as well. Of course, for many of the rabbis, and this is a totally side issue, mechiras chametz time is a time also where discretionary funds are able to be replenished so that we can help people in need and do things that are normally not part of budgets. Normally, that's done by either in person or by mail, whatever works, that would also be helpful as well. One last thing that I want to share with you, and I'm going to share a screen with everyone, and that is a very important website that everyone should be familiar with. And I'm not sure where I put it, and I will get it for you in just a moment, that website. The website is called Ask CRC. Ask CRC is www.askcrc.org. And I'm looking for it, and for some reason I'm not able to share it at the moment. I'm going to try it one more time. Excuse me, one more second. I apologize. I'm going to see if I can pull it up. It's right here. And you'll see on your screen right now this website. So for example, on the Ask CRC website, and one of the main times rabbis ask questions, I will tell you right now, deodorants are fine for Pesach. I'll give you a little bit of more detail later. That's one of the favorite questions. We'll talk about toothpaste. But let's say you wanted to buy fruit and you wanted to know what the halachas was for Pesach this year. All you would need to do is you type in the word fruit, make sure you click Pesach and click search, and it will tell you all the information. If I want to know about frozen fruit on Pesach, here is the rules of frozen fruit. www.askcrc.org has a wealth of information, and this year there's even a new feature on it regarding lipsticks, which used to be a major consideration for people on which lipsticks are kosher and which are not. So those are the background pieces, and with everyone's permission, and I have only seen a couple of other questions. Oh, I see one more, I'm sorry, just came up. How do we handle Tanit B'chorim? For those of you familiar with the KINS website at konkins.org, the fourth pull-down menu is now called Learning. If you look, there are video shiurim. Today's shiur actually talks about Tanis B'chorim. The Tanis B'chorim this year will be handled virtually, live. There will be a shiur, we'll be broadcasting it both on Zoom and on phone. It's based on a psak of Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and also Rav Shechter has agreed with this, and Rabbi Rees, of course, also is in agreement with this. that in this unusual circumstance, we will rely on technology so that everyone who is a Bechor will not have to fast if they listen in the live shir. It's a live, not the recorded ones. The live shirim are what we're looking for. In terms of moving forward, let's talk tachlis. And I'm going to focus first and foremost on the oven, as I said before, then we'll move out in terms of other issues. There are three different ways that we can kasher things. There's actually a couple of more, but three primary ways we kasher things. Most people are familiar with the boiling pot of water. That's called hagola. Hagola is really not that hard. None of the shuls and none of the institutions this year will be doing community kashering. So everyone needs to know, how do you do it? And it's very simple. You take a pot that is clean and has not been used for 24 hours. Not being used for 24 hours is a principle you're going to find many, many times. The pot has not been used for 24 hours, it is clean. You fill it with water. The water can come from your regular tap, nothing special, and you put it on the stove. The stove does not have to be kosher for Pesach. The pot does not have to be kosher for Pesach. But you put it on the stove and you boil the water. You can kasher by boiling things that are metal and things that are plastic. Plastic is a machlokas between Rav Moshe Feinstein and between Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Rav Moshe did not allow plastics to be kashered. His reasoning was the only kasher things that we have a tradition, a Masorah about. However, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach disagreed, and he allowed the kashering of plastic. We kasher plastics today. That's also the same thing with synthetics, with countertops and other things of that nature, which we'll come across in a little bit. You take the boiling hot water, it is at a rapid boil. You place, let's say, silverware into that pot with the rapid boil, and then you remove it, and the minhag is that we rinse it off in cold water. Obviously, do not use your hands to put the things in, and definitely not to take the things out. That's where baskets or tongs or other things along the way play a role. Once the things come out, or once that silverware or that other metal utensils come out, they're not only kosher for Pesach, they're actually parv, which is sometimes what some people use if they want to move things from being fleshik to milchik. They'll kasher it for Pesach, take the fleshik silverware, kasher it for Pesach, use it for milchiks on Pesach, and they continue to use it for milchiks if they want the rest of the year. That's called hagola. That is the most common kind of kashering that's necessary. However, there are two other kinds of kashering, and this relates directly to the stove itself. One is called libun. Libun comes from the word lavan, white, which means that a metal, if it is heated to be white hot, it is then be able to be koshered. The difference between boiling and libun, boiling, remember, everything has to wait 24 hours before you kasher it. Libun, you can do it immediately, because libun destroys the flavors that may have been absorbed into the walls or in the utensil. However, libun is not a simple thing to do. To do libun, what you have to have is something has to be at least 850 degrees for a period of time. If you have a self-cleaning oven rises to that temperature. And so as a result, the inside of a self-cleaning oven is kashered by libun. If you don't have a self-cleaning oven, there were two other kinds of ovens, the old-fashioned ovens we'll talk about in a minute, and then the continuous clean ovens. Rabbi Shandalov Zatzal, who used to be the kashrus administrator of the CRC, used to refer to the continuous clean oven as the continuous dirty oven. Because the reality is you couldn't use a lot of different kinds of cleaners on it. But if you have a self-cleaning oven, you run it through a full cycle of the self-clean. Now, what you're going to still have to do is do a little bit of cleaning along the way. And that's particularly the parts of the oven where the door connects to the oven. Because there's a part where the door overlaps the opening of the oven, and that's not subject to the same libun, which ultimately means that you'll need some Easy Off or some other caustic kind of cleaner to be able to scrub off anything that's on there and clean it. Once you've applied Easy Off or something else that's literally poisonous to these surfaces, if it's absorbed and you've done your best cleaning possible, whatever's left there has already been rendered unfit for human consumption. And so while we try to do everything, if there's a tiny speck that you can't get off, you're still okay with that. So that's the inside. If you have a regular oven, well, in that kind of case, you don't have the ability to bring it up to 850 degrees. And people do remember the blowtorch. Well, the blowtorch is very hard to work in that kind of way. It's not realistic, if you notice from Rabbi Eisenbach's look as well. Really what you need to do is clean the oven the best that you can. Easy off. Anything you can do to clean it out. It's really got to get clean. And then don't use it for 24 hours. After it hasn't been used for 24 hours, you then turn it to the highest temperature. In most ovens, that would be 550 degrees, which would probably be the broil setting on the ovens. That kind of cleaning with that level of temperature, 550, is called libun kal, is called a lesser step of the white hot heat, which means it's really not libun. It's more like hagala, more like the boiling, which is why you have to wait 24 hours. So again, just to review.
Can I just step in? Can I
Yes,
step
please.
in? I apologize. Some people at home have ovens that are convection ovens also.
Yes.
So you got to be careful. They got the fan in the back there. So we'll do industrial wise. And I don't know if you could do it at the home, there's like a plate behind the fan, in front of the fan. If you can unscrew that plate and clean behind the fan and that plate, that would be very helpful, because there's a lot of chametz and schmutz in the back over there.
What happens
But if you can't get back there, at least take easy off and make sure to spray all around over there, and then clean it off well from all the fumes and everything.
Right. When you have that fan, what the fan does is it absorbs a lot of the grease. And so you have to be careful of that grease and other things that can fall back. And Rabbi Eisenbach's point about spritzing a lot and spraying a lot is what Rav Scheinberg Zatzal also used to refer to, and I'll mention it in a moment. So on the regular ovens, clean it as best as possible. And that takes time. That's why the oven is the main thing to worry about. That will take time. Then you set it at the highest temperature, let it burn out 45 minutes to an hour until it gets real hot inside. You have to make sure that temperature is important. It's not just a magical turn on for a minute and turn off. It has to rise to a high temperature. That's the inside of the oven. The top of the oven, the stove top, there are three kinds of stove tops. There's gas, there's electric, and there's the glass electric. The CRC holds that we can kosher all three kinds, but the one thing we need to be careful of, again, when we kosher those, is what we're koshering is the area where the burner is. The area between burners always has to be covered, because that surface can't be koshered in the same fashion. There are people now who have grates that cover the entire top of their gas top. Really, the best thing to do in that, and the easiest, put it in your oven and cook it in your oven at the 550, or even if you can at the self-clean. I don't know about surfaces. Yes, Rabbi?
No, we do the same thing.
Right.
It might get discolored a little bit, but it still holds up fine.
It's a much better way of doing it. And in terms of both of those, you have to clean the top of the stovetop as best as you can. And then again, you turn it up to the highest temperature and leave it at that highest temperature for about a half hour, 45 minutes as well, so that it really gets hot.
Just a suggestion too, when you do that, don't do all four at one time, because what happens is it gets very hot in the kitchen. So do 2 and 2, because anyways, you're going to cover in the middle anyways. It's just a suggestion.
And to be very honest, my job every year is the oven in our home. The oven will take me a couple of hours. It doesn't take much more. We have self-cleaning. It doesn't take that much more, but it has to be done well. And that's the thing. You'll have, razor blades sometimes to scrape and other things that you use to scrape and to clean along the way. I was asked the question on the chat, what about a gas grill? The answer with a gas grill is it's no different than the stovetop or the oven, but the question is, can you clean it? It is very, very hard to clean a gas grill. My recommendation is typically go purchase an inexpensive grill that you use for Pesach. But if you can clean that grill And if you can bring that grill up to the temperatures you need to do, it's kosherable. It's just one of those things that's very difficult.
And the cover's very difficult. We're talking about the cover that you put over, getting all the nooks and crannies underneath and on top. Unless you just take the cover off, but you could, when you turn on a grill gas, you could get it up to 600-700 degrees. I'm not saying you can't, but it's very difficult to clean, but you could do it.
That's the gas grill. Now, the next thing that we look at in a kitchen is the refrigerator. The refrigerator is really not hard at all. It's cleaning the refrigerator. It's always cold. You can clean it. There is a disagreement in positions of whether or not you need to cover the shelves or not. I don't cover my shelves in my refrigerator if they're completely cleaned. And here comes the spritz. And this is what you have to remember. Rav Scheinberg talked about it in a wonderful article. We also have it on the Khankin's website, his approach on how to handling things. And he says very simply, we're concerned about the crumbs. The big pieces you'll get, but in the refrigerator or in your kitchen cabinets, when you're cleaning it, spritz like crazy with your cleaning agent all over the place. If there's a crumb that you can't get out, it's going to be so destroyed by that spritz, it's going to be inedible. And that's a great way of doing it. Use the cleaner very liberally, clean it. You don't have to cover the shelves. There are some people who do. I respect those positions, but you can leave them uncovered and make the refrigerator that way. The same thing goes with the freezer. The only thing you have to be careful about in the freezer is when you have the water that comes out, or the ice makers that come out through the door, you also have to make sure you clean that area as well, run the water through as well, and you should be fine with the refrigerator. Then let's talk about kitchen cabinets. Kitchen cabinets are easy, really easy, except that you have to move everything out and clean them out. So just clean out the cabinets you're going to use. The cabinets you don't need to use, cover, seal them. The seal does not have to be hermetic. You just can put a sign up, chametz, don't open. You can turn around. Sometimes they turn around knobs. Those cabinets you're going to use, wipe them down, a lot of spritz, move on from there. Countertops. The CRC has a wonderful list in its book of every kind of countertop you could ever imagine. Most of them I've never heard of, but it is a great list, and it's all encompassing of what can be covered. It is found on page 26, 27, and 27. And some of these counters, it's real easy. And all you have to do is, and this is where it gets a little messy, you clean the countertops, and this includes formica and includes granite. These are the pages. You'll see them right in your book. It includes the things that can be kosher. You clean them down, you clean them off, and then don't use them for 24 hours with hot. That doesn't mean you can't have a box of Kleenex on the counter during that time. Just don't use it for 24 hours, and then afterwards, you boil up water in the pot that hasn't been used for 24 hours, even koshering everything else, and pour the boiling water liberally over the countertops. That's a mess. It is a little bit of a mess, and in my house, we have the crew that does I do the pouring, and the other crew that does the towels. But it happens and it works, and then you don't have to cover your countertops at all because you can kosher them. The same applies, by the way, to formica. The one issue you have to be careful about with countertops is that you have, that if there's a seal, if they're joined together, you have to be very careful to clean in crevices along the way. If you're concerned that a countertop, someone asks a question, concerned about a portion of a glass cooktop that will crack, you can leave what you do with the glass cooktop, just cover the space in between where the burners are. The places where the burners you don't have to cover. If you cover the whole thing, it will crack. If you have a countertop that you're afraid will get ruined by pouring boiling water on it, then don't pour boiling water on it. Just cover them and you're done. And the same thing with a kitchen table as well.
It's got to be a good cover. You got to have a very good cover.
A good solid cover.
Not just aluminum foil because it'll rip and everything.
Right, you need to have something that's good, but that's practical and you know what good is. The sink is easy as well. The sink, if you have a sink made, for example, of corian, or you have a sink made of stainless steel, things that can be koshered, boiling water. Don't use them with hot for 24 hours. Boiling water. You need to replace the part that goes in the middle where the grate is. In terms of the faucets, the same things. You'd be amazed if you look at the bottom of the faucet where the aerator is, where the water comes out. You'll see it gets schmutzig. So you got to clean them or you got to replace those. They're not hard to do, but you got to clean them. You have to open it up a little bit and clean it out. There is an issue with the hoses that pull out of the sinks if you have something there. The main issue again is cleaning it. Can you really get to that hose to clean it?
Yeah.
If you can't, then don't use the hose. Don't use the hose, but you can still use the water that comes out of that hose on Pesach. That's the kitchen. And nowadays, with most of our kitchens, between the stainless steel, the stone, and the other surfaces that we might use, you walk into a kitchen, you'll come into my house on Pesach, almost nothing is covered because things have changed so much from the way we were many, many years ago. That's the cleaning of the kitchen. One other thing to remember, the hood that's over some people's stoves also has to be cleaned because of the grease that's up in the hood. Even though you're not eating from there, that should be cleaned as well.
And the filters that are underneath have to be taken down and cleaned. That's between the stove and like your microwave. If you have it on top or the exhaust, you got a lot of schmutz, dirt.
Right.
And it's got to be cleaned well.
Right. And so I would just ask the question about a blech, an electric blech with a glass top. It's the same as a stove top. You know, the electric heating plate, you just go ahead, you wash it off, don't use it for 24 hours, then set it to the highest temperature, and you're okay with it. The coils are throughout the entire top of it as well. CRC, by the way, the CRC Pesach book, some of you have asked, if you don't have a hard copy, contact the CRC office, or you can also get everything online and download the entire CRC Pesach book at crcweb.org. I'm just looking for a moment to see other things. Backsplashes, just wash them. Okay, wash backsplashes. If it's boiling water, if you have a question if you can't use it, then don't use it. Let me move on a little bit further, and also again remind everyone that questions I'm happy to take along the way. When it comes to the question of pots and pans, sometimes some of our pots and pans are not going to fit into little pots and pans. Pots and pans that are used with liquid. So for example, a pot that you boil in, those are the things that you can do hagola on. Things that are used without liquid, for example, a cookie sheet, that requires libun, the same temperature as you would have when you're koshering with self-cleaning. Personally, I tell people that cookie pans, those kinds of things that require libun are just almost impossible to do. And even if you put them into your self-cleaning oven when it goes on a cycle of self-clean, it will probably destroy the pan. And so anything that requires libun, any cooking utensil that you use without a liquid. So again, you think about it, a grill. If you use a grill, a cookie pan, a container that you make kugel in, a cake pan, all of those things, very, very hard to kasher for Pesach. And as a result, I would suggest using either disposable or have something else. If you want to try, the only way to really do it is put it in the oven and do a self-clean cycle. And that most likely will destroy those things. If you have pots that are big and you want to kasher them for Pesach, again, really easy, a little messy. And that's where that famous stone comes from. The idea being that you fill the pot to the brim, boil it to a rapid boil. And the reason we take the stone is if you think about it, it's like a heating element that's added in and that causes things to overflow. You do not have to buy a special stone. Every year when I would do it at Kins, I would go in the backyard and see what kind of stones I have in the alley available to me. After a while, I did keep them from year to year. But if you have pots that don't fit into other pots, the way to kasher them is, again, hagolah, fill them with water. Again, don't use 24 hours, fill them with water, then boil them, rapid boil, and put something in that will cause it, that is hot, that will cause it to overflow.
You got to be careful with the handles to make sure that it's all cleaned all around.
And you may have to unscrew the handles, things like that.
At times, yeah.
And the same thing, warming drawer. Rabbi Schwartz may have a refuah shlema, possibly a number of years ago, but regarding warming drawers, CRC policy is this. The OU doesn't agree with them, but the OU is wrong on this. CRC policy is that what you do to kasher a warming drawer is you just take a sterno, thank you very much. You take a sterno and you put it in the warming drawer, turn the warming drawer to its highest temperature as well. And then what you need to do is you don't close the door all the way because the sterno, obviously it's a flame, will go out because of the lack of oxygen. The one thing you want to make sure of is in the sterno is that it's fueled with either ethanol or methanol. The other two kinds, which are diethylene glycol, is really a problem. That kind of fuel shouldn't be used for koshering, but most sternos are the regular
And
kind.
also there's one with wicks or without wicks. Better without the wick because the wick doesn't really produce the heat.
Okay, so you're
There's
much
two
better.
types of sternos.
Right, so just the sterno that burns itself, and that's
The
the
gel.
one, the gel. Okay, a blech, just a red old-fashioned metal blech. An old-fashioned metal blech can be kosher, but it has to be cleaned and it has to be brought up to a high temperature again. Because remember, that's the same thing as like the oven. Microwaves. Microwaves are really easy. You don't use a microwave for 24 hours. You make sure it's completely clean on the inside. If you have a convection microwave, again, if there is something you can detach to clean where the fan is, great. If you can't spritz in there as well, it won't hurt anything. And then afterwards, 24 hours it's not been sitting around, put a cup of water in it, boil the cup of water, and you're fine.
What about the glass plate?
The glass plate. The COC recommends not taking out the glass plate and not using the glass plate. Rabbi Schwartz actually held personally that Pyrex, the glass plates, could be kosher through Hagala, and I do that. It doesn't crack the plate, but different opinions on this, and the CRC publicly, and we respect it tremendously, takes that position as well. We're basically done with the kitchen. Now, by the time you're done going through the food cabinets and all the rest of the stuff, and while a lot of it is spring cleaning, the reality is it's not as difficult for Pesach. The chametz part of it is not as complicated. It's the cleaning part that gets a little complicated. The rest of the house, use your time wisely. And you know where it is. The Chazon Ish used to take out every book that he was going to use over the course of Pesach and shake them out to make sure there are no crumbs. The Chazon Ish was very machmer on this. Others, however, disagreed and said it wasn't necessary. Just make sure that you'll be learning. Don't learn at the kitchen table where there's Pesach food if you think there's going to be crumbs in your books. I don't remove crumbs from the books, but I do discover with my grandchildren at the house that very often what happens is I find chametz in the lower level shelves. So for those who have grandchildren, measure how tall your eldest grandchild is who's going to be walking around with food, and that's how high you have to go. You don't have to go 10 feet off the ground, but you may have to go 3, 4 shelves from the bottom. You may have to do it, and you may find some surprises. Even if, God forbid, you missed it. Okay, you find some chametz on Pesach. If it's not on Yontif, when Yontif it's muktzah, you just cover it. If it's not on Yontif, you take it, you flush it down the toilet, you throw it out. This year, bir chametz, the recommended piece for bir chametz actually is because we're not going to get together. If you're allowed to have a fire in your backyard, I don't know different rules of different municipalities. If you're allowed, you can get rid of the chametz that way. If you can't, you can flush it down the toilet. And in fact, Rav Schechter suggests that that's the way to handle bir chametz this year when we're going to be taking care of Pesach. In terms of a coffee urn, which I was just asked, a coffee urn or even a water dispenser like Hinkley and Schmidt. Well, I'm just saying about the hot coffee urn. It's a hot coffee urn is only used for hot water. It can be koshered, and the way it's koshered is by running through the hot water through the cycle. You run it through, and also by pouring hot water over the tap itself. If it is used, however, as some homes do, to also help heat up food on Shabbos, you put the kugel on top of that, you put challah on top of that, it's probably better not to kosher the hot water urn for Pesach.
Or you make noodle soups.
Okay,
and all those
right. If you make noodle soups right out of it as well. If you have a bottled water machine, well, in that kind of case, the same thing. Hot water over the taps. If you use it with hot water, run it through the hot water, run through, clean it out, and make sure you replace the bottle itself. Very easy. I'm looking to see if there are any other questions. The reason we don't there was a question regarding using boiling water to clean the stovetop between where the burners are. The question really is there's a number of different issues of the area between the burners. One is because of the splatter and the way splatter works, it may actually require libum, the area between the burners. In addition to it, the area between the burners could also have some challenges of how to clean them because they may, in some ovens, if it's not stainless steel, there may be another material. It's much better just to cover it with a piece of aluminum foil. It doesn't have to be taped down real strongly. It just has to be there at all. In terms of moving to one other topic of Pesach, and that's the topic of medicine and medications, the bathroom. The bathroom today is not hard to clean, maybe hard to clean, but it's not hard to clean for Pesach. Step number one, medications. Any medication that you have a prescription to take, a tablet, a capsule, take it for Pesach. There's no problem whatsoever. Don't change anything. Liquid medications can be a challenge, and that we should ask on a case-by-case basis of what is there. You can also check on the CRC website or on the CRC Pesach guide. There's a lot of places. If you don't know, send me an email and we will check into the liquids. Chewable medications are also the same thing. They need to be checked for Pesach. However, if you take a chewable medication by prescription from your doctor, for whatever the reason is, your doctor says that this is what you should be taking, don't stop, ask, but don't stop, because the medication needs to be taken. It's very, very important. When it comes to the questions of shampoos, shampoos are fine, okay? In addition to shampoos being fine, soap is fine. Toothpaste. Toothpaste is an old machlokas about toothpaste. Rabbi Schwartz would tell the story about one of the Rosh Hashivas from YU when he was in yeshiva, Rapolyakov, who would say that toothpaste are all fine and all toothpastes are good. Some of you are familiar with that approach. Others specifically will buy kosher for Pesach toothpaste. Whichever you do is fine. Obviously, when you're doing the Pesach, the reason why the toothpaste are no good is because no one would ever eat the toothpaste. If they invent a chocolate sundae toothpaste, it may be a different issue. And then you'd probably want to go for the Pesach toothpaste as well. And if some Meshugana likes toothpaste, remember they're a Meshugana. Okay, toothpaste by itself, kosher for Pesach. If you do, there are opinions otherwise that you don't need to have that. The difference which has happened over the last several years, and this also applies to perfumes, is that it turns out that the alcohol that's used in the United States is alcohol that is not chametz. And so whereas years ago, we had all of these issues of perfumes and issues of shampoos and everything else based on a position of Reb Moshe Feinstein, who said that if you could distill those liquids and make an alcohol out of it that was really edible, that it would still be a problem. Nowadays, we know it's not a problem for American-made products. Non-American-made products, we need to check case by case, non-American perfumes, non-American deodorants. You need to check on a case-by-case basis. And that also, if you have any questions, you can check with me as well. Vitamins. Vitamins, according to Rabbi Schwartz, are not a necessary prescribed medication. Sometimes they are. For example, for a woman who is expecting and has to take those vitamins, they are prescribed. And again, there are many options which are kosher for Pesach options. A wonderful website is koshervitamins.com. I'm not endorsing their business, but they do have a wonderful set of lists of kosher vitamins and kosher medications that are available. Koshervitamins.com. And I would suggest you look at that as well. In terms of kitnios, so two things about kitnios. Kitnios, one is when you go shopping, and I almost fell for this. At Jewel, for example, in the freezer section, kosher for Pesach freezer section, they have green beans. And I'm looking at it, and I had to remember for a minute, well, they could be kosher for Pesach for the Sephardim who are on this call. There are a lot of people this year who are saying we should permit kitnios because of the shortages of food. We have been assured by Rabbi Genak of the OU that there will be no shortages of Pesach foods this year. The question that exists right now is the hoarding. The chickens are putting out the same number of eggs as they did in the past. It's just people are hoarding. And by the way, the bathroom tissue people are putting out the same amount of bathroom tissue. And you'll excuse me, I'm not sure there's any greater need for it, but there's a greater demand for what's going on. So the issue of, should we permit kitnios all of a sudden because it's this kind of shas tzorach, it's an ace tzorah, it's whatever we're going to say, it's not the same as the starvation that was occurring during World War I, and which led many of the Gedolim to say kitnios are not an issue, even during World War II, where kitnios are not an issue for Ashkenazim, they still are. But kitnios are not chametz. And as I was taught many years ago, if you take an aspirin on Pesach, you are consuming kitnios. because it's cornstarch. That's one of the binding agents in there. Kitnios are permitted when it's for medicinal purposes, which is why the pills that we use can have that kitnios in it. And kitnios at the same time are not sold along with the rest of the chametz. So while you're not eating the rice, you're not, I was asked an interesting question. There was a person who has a sensory play space for their children, which is made of beans and rice. And are they allowed, do they have to get rid of it for Pesach? And I said, you don't have to get rid of it for Pesach. If they're playing in it, they can play in it. Just don't eat it. And that's the story of kitnios. In terms of, if you, the question is being asked, can we get the rabbis to postpone Pesach this year? There's actually, if you notice, there is on the internet, this a series of farmers are trying to petition the Rabbanut Rashit to create a leap month of other and push Pesach off for a month. It's a cute thing. It's not going to happen. Pesach is coming. Pesach is wonderful. Pesach is a time for family to be together. In terms of the tongs that you're using for koshering the silverware, again, those tongs would have to be not used for 24 hours. Those are the tongs you're going to pull the silverware out of the pot. They shouldn't be used for 24 hours. They should be clean. And
you got to be very careful because they have a lot of crevices in the tongs, in the outside and the inside. So just make sure it's completely clean if you're going to use tongs.
Yeah, Tylenol, Advil, Excedrin are all fine for Pesach again. Mm-hmm. You're swallowing them. They're not they're medications in the same. You use them when you need to use them, and you're swallowing them, which also changes the whole nature of how things are at. Rabbi Eisenbach, I think I've covered my list of items, but I want to go back on one piece, and that one piece is very simple. Pesach is a joy. We make it hard. And this year, we have to figure out a way to bring that joy back. So when unfortunately or fortunately, all of us are spending more time at home. You can start your spring cleaning now if you want. Just don't get it confused with koshering for Pesach, and don't say how it took you to do the kitchen 47 hours. It took you to get rid of things that you should have gotten rid of 6 months ago, 47 hours. Please make sure of it. In terms of the oven fan, Rabbi Eisenbach, the same thing, the oven fan, the convection oven fan would work for your convection oven, self-cleaning ovens. If they have a convection fan, and
that'll burn everything out in there too, right?
Should be no problem as well. Someone asked me a side question, not to do with Pesach, but to do with the scenario about whether the mikvahs are open. Actually, to do with Pesach, the mikvah is open for toveling new items. Currently, they are. Yeah. They may close. If the mikvah closes, for the kelim mikvah closes, they've added chlorinated them further. If they do close, the way we're going to resolve that issue, and it's been addressed already, is that we will give a portion of that utensil that we bought that needs to be toveled to a non-Jew. Because it's partially owned by a non-Jew, it doesn't have to be toveled. And then once we're able to use the mikvahs again, if God forbid they need to close, then you will reacquire that from the non-Jew. It'll be totally yours again. And at that point, you would take them to the mikvah. If it's for the entire, let's say it's a Pesach thing, and let's say the mikvahs are closed throughout Pesach, and they aren't closed now, but let's say they do get closed and they're closed throughout Pesach, and only after Pesach will they open again? That's not a problem. Reacquire them from that non-Jew. You can share that ownership when the point when you purchase it. You can share that ownership with a next door neighbor. You can even do it by giving him this over the phone if necessary, if there's no other option. And then you'll take him to the mikveh next year when the time comes to get ready for Pesach to unpack your Pesach goods.
I see the antacid question. Yeah. Antacid is either get a pill form of antacid or get the kosher brand of the Tums, because the regular Tums could actually be chametz.
Okay, so there's a kosher brand of Tums. People wanted to know about in terms of preparing for the Seder. Well, preparing for the Seder this year is no different than any other year. For those of you who have not prepared for the Seder recently, remember, first of all, the shiurim that we have are large shiurim. And people who are able to eat larger amounts of matzah, it's wonderful. Generally on the hand shmura, it's for the first time and the last time. For the motzi matzah and the afikomen, about a half a piece of hand shmura, and it's about a third of a piece for the korech. However, those are larger measures. Those are the measures, according to Moshe Feinstein. The Chazon Ish, who people often think was more stringent, the Chazon Ish actually held it was about half of that amount. And if a person is unable to eat too much, there's a wonderful article in the CRC guide by Rabbi Cohn on people who have dietary restrictions, who have challenges in terms of their digestive systems, who just can't eat so much. That's part of the Pesach Seder. The last word I would make about the Pesach Seder is it needs to be fun. Find ways to make it different. Unfortunately, this year, there may be people who will be alone for Pesach. There'll be the first time, for example, where couples may not have grandchildren or children coming over to the house, depending on circumstances. There's a lot that we still don't know about. Some people have suggested that they work before Pesach and create virtual Haggadahs by family, where everyone contributes something in advance, or even doing a little bit of a mock Seder in advance, so you can listen to your grandchildren sing Manishtana. All of these kinds of things we have to think about, but we also should look at the fact, and this I mentioned in my drasha this past Erev Shabbos, when I gave it on Thursday night, it's on the Kin's website as well. Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch in the 1800s actually proposed closing all of the synagogues in Frankfurt. And the reason he felt was that people were making religion synagogue-centric as opposed to family and home-centric. And he said, we have to change the way we look at the world and the way we look at Judaism. Judaism is a religion that we have that has both family, both home at its center, and yet at the very same time, it has the opportunity for individuals to connect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I think I'm going to end on this note. Pesach is the time when we have the opportunity to really connect. This Pesach will be a way that we can connect in a different way. And if we take advantage of that different way, if we think about how we can make our Seder better, even if it's very different and unusual, even if we may be alone or we may be in a very, very small family unit, how we can make it different. It's something I would spend more time on thinking of the Pesach Seder than some of the kashering we're doing, because we have an opportunity, and next year we'll have the opportunity to appreciate what we used to do much, much more. On that note, I want to thank Rabbi Eisenbach.
I just want to add a couple things.
Oh, Rabbi
I know
Eisenbach.
this is a common question. People always ask me about instant coffees. Do they need a hechsher for Pesach? So just to know, like Taster's Choice, Nescafe regular is fine without an OUP on it. Folgers regular and decaf, just with the OU alone, is also fine for Pesach. Because you can't, and I suppose Maxwell House, you get a Haggadah with them if you buy one with them with the OKP on it. Someone asked a question about fiber. I forgot that name brand. If it's the unflavored fiber, it's fine for Pesach also. About a steamed kashering granite counters. At this point, I don't know anybody who comes right now to their houses to do the steaming. But again, Rabbi Meting didn't mention, but it's on our website too about how to kasher. There's videos on our website of how to kasher your kitchen for Pesach, visual aid.
Rabbi Eisenbach is the expert in kashering. If you go to the CRC website, his video on how to kasher for Pesach has how many tens of thousands of hits?
We're going to Hollywood soon. I think it's got almost 40,000.
40,000 hits. And to remind you again, Rabbi Eisenbach is talking about the instant coffee. If you just look here, this is from Ask CRC, has the information, askcrc.org. It will put most of the rabbis, myself included, out of business before Pesach.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a wonderful site. Rabbi Eisenbach, now I will thank you. I will thank everyone else for participating. This presentation will be put up and a recorded version on our website. Everyone is invited to visit kankins.org. I hope this has been helpful, and I wish everyone a Chag Kosher v'Sameach.
Thank you.